I forgot.
See what's all in the bottom.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Thursday, May 8th, and the time is 4 p.m. And with a quorum being present, I'm going to open this meeting of the New Ulm Public Library Board. You should have all received a copy today of our agenda and the minutes from our last meeting. We do have one item to add to our agenda. The Friends have asked to make a presentation following Carl Zeidler's, the number 3 agenda item. We've got one addition there. And we will begin with the minutes from our previous meeting of April 10th. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions that need to be made to the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
I'll second that.
Very good. Thank you. The next item is the April 2014 financial report and summary. Mr. Director?
Which is on page 3. And the one thing I'll say about this, we did get the TDS bill. We get 2 6-month bills, basically a year. And we did finally get the bill for the first half, so that number will be changing from 0. Other than that, everything's pretty much as expected. Computer supplies and equipment, another example of, when we need to buy something, we buy it, and that can be very low, or we could have spent it early in the year. It just varies year to year. So that budget has not really been touched so far this year. AV rentals is a very small budget, so if we happen to get a few extra rentals that we weren't expecting, it suddenly looks like we're doing a great job of getting revenue from AV rentals, but it's not. It's just that it's a small estimate each year. Any questions?
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Director. Our next agenda item is Carl Zeidler, who is the Human Resources Director, and he is going to talk about the process for replacing our retiring Library Director, Larry Halafzak. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carl Zeidler. I'm the Human Resources Director for the City of New Ulm and the Public Utilities Commission of New Ulm. You want me to step up here? Okay. And it is true that I have also been made aware that Larry is retiring, and congratulations to Larry. And I want to say that Larry has been here almost 7 years, and Larry arrived at a time when we were in dire need of some stability and strong leadership in the library. And I have to congratulate Larry and thank Larry for the wonderful job in doing those things for us that made the library what it is today under his leadership. So thank you, Larry, and congratulations on reaching this point in your life where you can head north and worry about things up north.
Thank you, sir.
When the city encounters a vacancy in one of our management or leadership department head positions, as with other positions, we review the job description of that position, which we have done, and thanks again to Larry for some of his comments in regards to upgrading and updating our job description. And then what we typically will do then is, on or about the time that the incumbent is leaving their post, we have a practice where we, in management positions, have some flexibility, and it depends a lot on how we view the makeup of our departments. And we are going to be posting this position internally, and we hope that there will be folks or people who are qualified who sign that posting and have an interest in the position. Subsequently, after that posting period of 10 days, if someone has signed it, then we will conduct an interview and evaluation process. I have to tell you that if more than one person signs, it becomes a competitive interview process and evaluation. If one person signs it, which we have had happen in the past, it is more of an informal interview and evaluation process, but nonetheless, it is a process. And with respect to the library vacancy as director, we have in the past, and we would intend to do this, is include a member of the library board in the review panel for this position. In the past, it has been the individual who's been the chair of the board that has participated. And once we have settled on a candidate that we would like to make a recommendation to the board upon, the city manager would submit that individual's name for your consideration and adoption of his recommendation. And that is the long and short of it. It's not going to be a lengthy process, I hope. And I believe at your next meeting on June 12th, the city manager will be able to be present here and submit a recommendation to you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the process.
You said that it will be posted internally. Do you have a date for when that will be posted?
It will be done in such a time that we can conclude our evaluation and posting period prior to your next meeting. Your next meeting is the 12th of June. I think on or before the end of the month, we might be able to start that posting process.
Another question. The last time I was on the board, before Larry's hire, but before Larry's hire, the board was involved in meeting the candidates, and I think we had a pool of 3 candidates we were able to talk to.
Mhm.
Are you telling us you'll just bring us one candidate that's already been approved? Or will we be
It-
involved in more than that?
Well, the posting period will be such that if more than one person signs it, from an internal perspective, who is typically known to the board as well as to us, it won't be the same as what you experienced when we were reviewing external candidates. I think at the time that you may be referring to, we didn't have a process in place internally for the position because we didn't have at the time an assistant library director in that position.
Any other questions for Mr. Zeidler? Very good.
I have one more question. Maybe this is an internal discussion for the library board, but if we have a person internally that we're pleased to hire all the way around, then it wouldn't be put to an external search. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we would still have a bit of overlap with Larry being gone and the new person coming on. And if the new person coming on would happen to be the assistant moving up, then we would also need to look for a replacement for that position. Would that be correct?
If those things worked out as you described, then
I know it's
that would be true. In some instances, well, not in some instances, in most instances where there is an assistant and the department head leaves prior to the naming and or appointment of a new department head, the assistant is an interim
Right.
department head.
Right.
And I would expect that in this case, we would have an interim appointment for that period of time where there's a lapse in a library director. And if that interim is an individual who signs the posting and we consider their candidacy, that would be a matter for the review panel to evaluate that person's candidacy and then come back to the board. I don't want to state the obvious because
No,
I think,
no.
we're all pretty well aware of what the obvious is, but until it actually happens, it is, as you say, hypothetical.
Right. And I'm just concerned for the library and the library staff that we aren't going to be expecting one person to do two jobs or have an opening that would create a long-term lack at the library for staff. But you see this progressing as rapidly as possible.
Especially the filling of the director's position, library director's position. If it happens to occur, as we're talking about in hypotheticals, it may take longer to fill that secondary position. And that happens for a number of reasons. One is the appointment would be a probationary appointment. And if for some reason something does go according to either their plan or our plan, we have, as a practice, allowed that person to, or a person so promoted, to go back to their old position. So we would at least have a 3-month wait.
So then one person would, in effect, be doing two jobs, perhaps.
Well,
Acting as
yes, that
as a
certainly is
director
possible.
and-
I mean, we have that occurring quite frequently as, we experience vacancies in all of our departments.
So then some work does not get done because one person can't do two jobs.
There'll be some activity that does suffer, or there is some sharing and spreading some of those responsibilities out amongst staff, especially for those activities that are of a greater priority.
And so some of their activities then have to not be done because they'll be sharing
It
that.
has a trickle-down effect, you're absolutely
Right.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Anything else?
Very good. And then I believe the Friends wanted to make some kind of a presentation.
Hello, the mic works a lot better for me because I'm short. My name is Lowell Liedman. I'm currently the president of the Friends of the Library. I want to thank you very much for allowing us to make a couple of points today. We have 4 other members of the Friends group, including all of our officers, are here, and you can address any questions to me or to anyone else. I'm at my first library board meeting since I was on the library board. As a matter of fact, I was on the library board when we approved to hire Larry. And I do have 2 points I'd like to make today. One is just to acknowledge the great appreciation we have for working with Director Larry over these last years. He's been very easy to work with, and almost from day one, he's been acting as our recording secretary. The Friends of the Library was a very new group when Larry first came. We were only a few months old. We had kind of a skeleton crew board, and we didn't have too many members. Now we have a lot of members, and I hope we're able to help the library. Larry, I know that you know virtually everything that we do since you have been acting as the recording secretary, and I thank you very much for that. He is not officially on the Friends of the Library board, but he's been helping with us very much. Thank you very much, Larry. The second point I want to make is that we know that Larry obviously is retiring, and we would like to use any influence we have, I realize that's really very little, to show our support for Chris Wiley as the next library director. We have worked very closely with Larry since he's been here, and since Chris has been here, we've also worked very closely with her. She frequently comes to our meetings, and since we sponsor things that usually she's the brains behind, she knows what we're doing. And as a result, I would like to present to the library board a letter which we have written with all of the signatures of the members of the Friends of the Library Board, and it just acknowledges our wholehearted support for Chris as the next library director. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll also take a third point that'll be very brief over the years. If you're a new library board member, I would like to tell you that most library board members have also been members of the Friends of the Library. So if you are new and haven't joined, please think about that.
Very good. Do we have any questions for Mr. Liebman? Very good. Thank you so much. Moving on to the librarian's report. Mr. Director.
Which can be found on page 16. The Fred Johnson exhibit, Chris will talk about. She had sent out an RFP, and she will talk about the results of that. Again, Chris was behind really the Book Nook. We had a call from, or I had a call from a physician in the cancer center at Newell Medical Center, and they wanted to know if we could provide some materials for a bookshelf. In this center, people are often there getting treatment for 6 or 7 hours at a time. And so we thought that was a great idea, and we have things that are withdrawn or gift books that we really can't use. And so Chris really is the one who worked with them, and that has been installed at this point. And I would like to point out that the volunteer who is going to add periodically to the materials is a new Friends director, Chris Trutloff. So thank you, Chris. Last time, I believe it was, or the meeting before, I talked about the lights issue over our service center. And you had approved the replacement of those lights, and the replacements were wonderful, terrifically bright, so much so that we didn't need the lower lights. The problem was that they were very glary. So, make a long story short, the installer, Paul's Electric, came back, installed a cover, showed us the cover, and the covers will not be free. They're not a standard part of it. But I am going to point out that you had approved funding for both projects, and we won't need to do the other one. And so the covers plus the lights is still less than the two projects. So budget-wise, we're looking just fine. Just to make you aware that Traverse de Sioux is looking at new, well, I shouldn't say it that way. They're looking at vendors of integrated online library systems, as they're called. We currently have Circe, and the committee met that is reviewing 3 potential candidates for a new system. And they looked at Circe, and there was discussion at a meeting today of the directors about that. And then they'll be looking at 2 other vendors. So just be aware that there may be a huge change, but the likelihood is may not be a huge change, but it is being looked at this point. With my departure, over the last 7 years, we have maintained our own web server to make a point, although I'm quite technical, I'm not a designer, and frankly, the design of our site has never been very good as far as I'm concerned, but it was certainly a workable and practical site. With my departure, however, we were looking to make it require a bit less in the way of maintenance. And so, as we had in the past, we talked to the city, and we are migrating now have been over the past some weeks. Not sure when exactly it will go live, but it basically will be housed on the city's, the vendor that the city uses will also be ours. And the good advantage of that is we can do it under the city, and it's not going to cost us anything. I say that because we had, I think a couple of years ago, investigated what getting a designer in, and I think the amount was like $50,000. We said that's not going to happen. So, and the good part of this is, again, it will be updatable via a browser, so it can be done from anybody's desk at the library. And it won't be on our site, or it won't be on our server. Once it migrates to the city, we will simply shut down the web server that we have been using. Summer reading, I believe each of you got a brochure on the summer reading program, and so that is starting very soon. Kitty has scheduled school tours, and I would like to point out that we did get a donation of $250 from 3M to help purchase books for the summer reading program this year, and so we thank them. And I guess that's about it, unless there are any questions.
Very good. Mr. Director, it looks like you covered the lighting project, the Fred Johnson exhibit update.
Next thing would be programming.
Oh, excuse me, programming. I'm sorry, Ms. Wiley.
Thank you. We received one legacy grant this month for a Civil War program in August. I'm working with the Brown County Historical Society for Dakota War commemoration programs in August, so I anticipate several grants being turned in at the end of May. Coming up for programs, tonight at 6 o'clock, Renee Wendinger will be in the meeting room to talk about her Orphan Train historical novel, Last Train Home. Thursday, May 15th at 6 o'clock will be our final Muslim Journeys program, and that's a film screening. We had 4 book discussions over the course of the fall and spring. One was canceled because of weather. But over those 4 discussions, we haven't had an average attendance of 32 people. And so I consider it a great success and got wonderful feedback from the folks who participated that perhaps we should do something like this again. Monday, May 19th at 6:30, author Thomas Maltman will discuss his book Little Wolves. That's part of the mystery book group. Everybody is invited to grab a copy and read up beforehand, or just come and join us. And Mr. Maltman went to Mankato and got his master's degree. And this book is actually based on an incident that happened in Morgan. Tuesday, May 20th at 6:30 will be our final Civil War roundtable of the year. It will be a discussion about female soldiers in the Civil War. We do take the summer off, and then we'll start back up again in September. Wednesday, May 28th at noon tunes with Andrea Lynn and Dick Kimmel. Andrea Lynn is just a beautiful guitar player and an original songwriter. Wednesday, May 28th, but in the evening at 6:30, we're starting our science fiction book group. And everybody's invited to read The Time Machine and join us for a discussion of that book. Thursday, May 29th at 6 p.m., Dr. Peter Mansour, who is a New Ulm native, will be coming back to talk about his new book about the Iraqi surge. He worked for General David Petraeus, so has some insight into that part of the war. Thursday, June 5th at 6 p.m., return to Milford with John Labatt and Rich Runk discussing the reservation boundary line and more research that they've conducted since their last presentation about a year and a half ago. Wednesday, June 11th at 6 p.m., a bluegrass music in the modern age with the Alan Mundy Trio will be in the meeting room. And then perhaps one of our most important programs, it's coming up Friday, May 16th from 2 to 3:30, we will have an open house farewell retirement reception for Larry. Everybody is welcome to join us. There'll be coffee, cake, and conversation. Are there any questions? Yes.
What about that train that was going to be coming?
That's right.
Yes, we did have a train bus tour in the works that I postponed, and because of the changing, things that are changing at the library, it's not a project I can take on at this time.
So maybe in 2015? you think?
Perhaps. It's certainly on the radar.
Okay, thank you.
There's obviously a great community need, so.
You know, our bus tours are so popular.
Yes.
They book immediately with a waiting list. So I know it would be really well received. It's a big project to put it together. So it's not dead in the water. It's just on hold for the moment.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Wiley? Thank you so much, Chris, and good luck during this transition time. We
Thank
wish you
you.
the very best. And now, we will move on to the updates.
Fred Johnson? Chris will be handling Fred
Chris
Johnson.
is doing Fred Johnson, okay.
I put together the request for proposal for the Fred Johnson exhibit. It was to be an enclosure with objects donated by Joan Baeza, Fred Johnson's granddaughter, and we did not receive any vendors replying to that request for proposal. So Gigi Portner from the library board and Denny Werda, George Glatzbach, Larry and I met the other day and discussed what do we do from here. I had talked to one of the vendors that we had asked to bid on this project, got some feedback from her about what we could do to present a better proposal, and it includes things like being more specific about the work and doing the research, creating the text ahead of time. They need to work with text as well as the objects. And so we're talking about doing this locally, using some talent, artistic talent and construction talent here in the New Ulm area to construct this project. So at this point, we are looking at writing doing the research, writing the text for it, and then beyond that, we will look at vendors, local vendors who could put this project together. So it's still in the plans, and I think it's going forward. It's just a longer process than we anticipated. Are there any questions about that? Thank you.
Very good. And now, Mr. Director.
Yeah, I'll follow that with the Wandagog statue. If we could have that graphic on the screen. You all have copies of this, and I've mentioned this in the past, and there is an ad hoc group of New Ulm citizens which is several members of the Wandagog House and some others, including two members. Both Chris and I have been going to the meetings. I did mention at the last meeting that I was attending my last meeting, and the suggestion was made, maybe somebody on the library board wants to be on the Wandagog committee. So if you can address that, or if anybody would like to express interest, we'd be interested in your interest. The group continues to meet not on a regular basis, but on a fairly frequent basis. What you're looking at in the handouts I gave you and on the screen here is the latest iteration. It's incomplete. Wanda seems to be hanging in her drawing board is hanging in midair. The pedestal on which it's going to sit has not been done at this point. This was just done to give everybody some idea of what it would look like. It's by no means a finished drawing. And the feeling was among everybody that share what we've got at this point to get any reactions that we might get. So the group continues to meet, moves along. The artist we're working with is Jason Jasperson. I would reiterate, this is not a library project. but is being spearheaded by this group of independent citizens. Any questions?
Is this something the board will have to, in any way approve before it be installed, or who would make a determination?
The board has the responsibility of approving any piece of art except to be displayed at the library, yes. So keeping you apprised of where we're at is a really good idea. We had done this in the past. The Dell Ironclad painting is an example where we had pretty much a finished small drawing. It wasn't absolutely finished, but you got a good look and were able to give your input so that hopefully between the time of the small kind of finished preliminary drawing and the actual painting being done, there wouldn't be any change in your opinion about whether it was worthwhile adding to the collection.
And this group that's working on it, are they working on the funding for it then also?
They are.
So it'd be no expense to the library.
We would provide, well, that's not entirely true. There would be no expense to the library for the artwork. There is discussion about lighting and perhaps some kind of landscaping around it. So I would not say that there is no library expense, but I would at the same time say that the vast majority of the expense is in the artwork. And
And we would know that before we would say yes regardless.
I'm sure the city would want us to
Right.
have come up with some estimates about what we're talking.
Do they have any timeline for when they're hoping to see this accomplished? Is it a year out, longer than that?
I've never heard a timeline,
Okay.
no. But as I, the only thing I'd point out that they are meeting regularly. It's not, once in January, once in September, then we're into the next year. They're meeting regularly, so it is a group that seems committed to this idea and getting this done. So I think although we don't have a timetable, we're not talking 10 years from now. We're talking in the not too distant future.
Okay. Thank you, Larry.
I think
So
we should-
is there any interest of anybody who would like to be on that committee?
I think we should give everybody an opportunity to think about that and have it on our agenda item too for our next meeting.
When do they normally meet?
It's
I
been
mean,
Mondays
evenings,
at 4?
afternoons, or?
Has it been Mondays at 4?
It's Mondays at 4:30, and our next meeting, it's about once a month. Our next meeting is Monday, June 2nd at 4:30. We have been meeting at the library. The meetings last about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. The artist is available then, so it's been that way for several months, Mondays at 4:30.
One other thing that's not on the agenda that I just wanted to mention as an FYI, street department will be doing some trimming on a couple of the trees that are in front of the library. One that is very large, that actually you can see on this drawing, it's on the left side. The branches are overhanging the building and the maintenance tech is worried about it breaking the seal on the roofing and so on. So anyway, just so you're aware that there'll be some trimming going on that tree and on the, I think it's a crabapple between the museum and us.
Okay.
Another one that's kind of gangly. It goes all over the place and needs some work.
Very good.
And then I have one more thing, if I may.
Absolutely.
It being my final meeting, rather than speaking extemporaneously, I've always found that if I want to say what I want to say, it's best that I write it out. So I hope you'll bear with me as I read my statement carefully thought out. This is my last New Ulm Library Board meeting, and as you're aware, I'm retiring on May 31st. And if I may, I'd just like to take a few minutes to thank this board and the predecessor boards that I've worked with for providing support and guidance to me during the past 7 years. While I won't name every member of the board over the past 7 years, I do want to single out the 2 chair people I've worked with, Dustin Cross and Brett Olson, who have been very helpful and to me as chairpersons during my tenure. Thank you. I also wish to thank the Friends who, as Lowell pointed out, were kind of getting started when I arrived. The truth is, it isn't the first library Friends group that existed, but it's I've been very happy to see it building, and as I leave, I don't think while I was here it ever got to be more than 4 directors, and now they're at 7. So that's very, very great progress. The chairs of the Friends during my tenure have been Jen Wallach, Sven Elma, Lowell Liedman, Alma Marin, and Kay Simpson. And I wish the Friends continued success in assisting the library and its staff. I really think sometimes I get the impression from them that they think because they're not huge amounts of money that they contribute, that they don't think it's as important, but I want to tell them it's an important work that they do for the library. And to those of you in the cable audience, if you're not already a friend of the library, let me say, please consider being one. City staff who do not work at the library still have a tangible effect on our operations, and whether it's police officers, accounting personnel, building inspection, or street department staff, parks and rec staff, they all have an effect on what we do. And my thanks to everyone in those and other departments who have helped the library over the years. As you might expect, library staff, without whom a library cannot operate, are nearest and dearest to my heart. And I'd like to say to the many different staff at all levels who've contributed such good work over the past 7 years, I give my sincerest appreciation. With their help, my job looks and is easy, but without them, my job becomes pretty impossible. So thanks to Chris, Katie, Betty, Linda, Carla, Diane, Mary Jo, Carolyn, Lisa, Sue, Luann, Jamie, Linda, Elizabeth, Sue, Jean, and Jay. And I could have said that list without looking at this, but it would have taken a little time. And also to those who've already retired or for other reasons have left the library, I'd like to thank them for their contributions. Finally, to the customers of the New Ulm Library, whether you're residents or non-residents, thank you for making us your library of choice. We always hope to do a good job for you, and we always appreciate your comments when we do and when we don't. Thanks for your ongoing support of our budget, programming, and for the donation of materials that you give us. I thank you for caring about library services in your community. Finally, to the people of the town of New Ulm, thank you for allowing me Here, I'm going to get a little. Thank you for allowing me to raise my 3 children in such a great place. The last one graduates in this month, and I've truly enjoyed my 7 years here. And only the siren song of largemouth bass calling to me from northern Minnesota were able to pry me away from this place. Honestly, I heard them calling. I wish you all the best, and I wish the library the best as well. Thank you.
Very good. On behalf of the library board, I'd like to thank you for your service. It's been a pleasure working with you, and We will miss you and know that you have left things in good hands and better than when you started. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have completed all of our agenda items today. Is there any additions or last minute additions? Very good. With our agenda completed, I will close this meeting at 4:40 PM. Thank you.